Once again, good evening. Tonight's Committee of Adjustment hearing is being held by video conference and live streaming video on the town's live stream webpage at oakville.ca. This is a hearing to consider applications for minor variance and consents held under the authority of the Planning Act. Please keep in mind the intent of this process is to review the application that is before the committee, listen to the evidence, and then make a decision. This process is not intended to be used to resolve any concerns or disputes that may exist between the town, individuals, or organizations. If a request for a deferral is made and the committee grants such a request, the applicant authorized agent must contact the Secretary Treasurer to schedule a new hearing date. In order to conduct an effective and efficient electronic hearing, we have adopted the following process. If you are watching the live stream of this hearing on oakville.ca and if you wish to speak to an item on the agenda, you can call 905-815-6095. Again, the number is 905-815-6095. The phone number is also posted at the live stream page at oakville.ca. Staff will be standing by to take your phone call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conference. When the chair of the committee polls for interested parties, the Secretary Treasurer will unmute you when it is your turn to speak. The applicant or agent will be given the opportunity to briefly explain to the committee the basis of the application and answer any questions that may arise. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for presentation. You will need to provide your full name and address for the record, and any submission beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. All delegations must also state their full name and address for the record, and any 5 minutes will be provided to make the presentation. All remarks and questions are directed to the chair. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. The applicant or agent will then be provided with a further 5 minutes to respond to comments made by interested parties and answer any questions from the committee members. If the applicant or agent has any concerns found in the staff report, particularly with any proposed conditions, this will be the opportunity to advise us. The matter will then be taken into committee for a decision, and it will mark the end of all discussion. Any person desiring a notice of decision for an application must provide their written request, preferably through email, to the Secretary Treasurer. Please note that you must make a written request in order to be included on the list that is used by the Ontario Land Tribunal for giving any subsequent notice of appeal. Written notice of the committee's decision will be mailed no later than 10 days for minor variance and 15 days for consent applications to the applicant, an agent, or any other person who has filed a written request for such a notice. If you do not agree with the committee's decision, you may appeal this to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and the last day to appeal the decision will be noted on the decision. If no appeal is received within the prescribed timeframe, the decision of the committee becomes final and binding, and the Secretary Treasurer will then notify the applicant and anyone who received a copy of the decision through written correspondence. People participating in this hearing are to be courteous to and respectful of the members of the committee, town staff, and any other person attending the electronic hearing. Tonight's electronic hearing is being video recorded and available for future viewing at oakville.ca. Thank you. There are no regrets for this evening. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interests? Okay, I see none. Thank you. I will now take withdrawal requests or requests for deferral. Madam Secretary Treasurer, if we have anyone that's called in with such a request, you may start putting him through to the panel.
Okay, it'll just take me a moment. I'll move them into the meeting.
Very well, thank you.
Okay, I've moved Babak Naghash into the meeting.
Hi, my name is Babak Naghash. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Is your camera available, sir?
Sorry? Yes.
Is your camera available? Could you perhaps turn it on?
Yes, it is.
Very well. And which application are you here for?
Yes, I'm here for the property address 2006 Waters Edge Drive. Application number CAV A-182-2022.
Very well, sir.
So we received the comments from the planning department and the neighbors, and we had no time to work with planning department. So I would like to defer this application. So work with planning and the neighbors to improve the design.
Very well. Thank you for your submission. Members, I'm in your hands. All those in support of a deferral. Okay, the application has been deferred. You'll see the Secretary Treasurer at your earliest convenience.
Thank you so much.
Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Okay, I've moved Leon Wang into the meeting.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hi, good evening, Mr. Wang.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Liang Wen. So I'm the architect for property at 1230 Downley Crescent. I would request a deferral because
Sir, do you have your camera on by any chance? If you are able to turn it on, that would be appreciated.
give me a second. Yep.
Very well. Thank you. You are the architect for the applicant, correct?
Yes, I am.
You would like to request a referral to work with staff further and
Yes.
speak to your neighbors
Yes.
regarding their opposition?
Right.
Okay, very well. I will note that there have been 2 emails of opposition. We do have them on record from Mr. Zhou and Matthew Sambrook.
Right.
So if you'd like to reach out to them.
Yes.
Members, all those in support of a deferral?
Yep.
Okay, the application has been deferred. Thank you.
Mm.
Mr. Nagash, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I forgot to mention that we do have emails of opposition from 3 of the neighbors, and perhaps you'd like to reach out to them. Mr. Patel, Mr. Pritz, and Mr. Kazim.
Yes, I do have all of them, and we're gonna reach them.
Very well. Thank you for your.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good night, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Secretary Treasurer, is there anyone else?
Yeah, there are several people with their hands up that I'm trying to move into the meeting, but I certainly don't
Okay.
see the hand. There was another request for 565 Weir Avenue, but I don't see anybody's hand raised to move them into the meeting.
Okay, very well. Is the attendant,
sorry,
if there's
it'll
anyone
just-
in attendance who would like to submit for a deferral, withdrawal of application, please do raise your hand and the Secretary Treasurer will make the motion to bring you into the meeting.
I have moved Jonathan into the meeting. And
Okay.
there's a Karen Pullman in the meeting as well. She had her hand up.
Okay, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing this wrong. And Skowski?
Fairly close, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Which application are you here for, sir?
I'm here for 565 Weir.
Are you the applicant or the
The applicant, Madam Chair.
you are the applicant, okay. And you're here to request a deferral, correct?
Correct, Madam Chair.
I do note that you have one email of opposition that we've received from Mr. Full. You'll see the Secretary Treasurer when you're ready.
Yes, Madam Chair. We actually already have a meeting scheduled with planning for next week to discuss the proposals.
Okay, very well. Members, I'm in your hands. All those in support of a deferral. Okay, the application has been deferred. Thank you.
Thank you.
You had someone else also in the meeting?
There's a Karen Pullman in the meeting. And a Gary.
Ms. Pullman?
And a Gary
Hello.
Sproles.
Hi, I just wanted to correct the record with respect to 2006 Waters Edge Drive. It noted that one of the opposition letters was from Mr. Patel. It's actually from Ms. Pullman is the name that was submitting on it. Who's also a homeowner next door.
I have a Karen Pullman and a Sanjay Patel.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that it was noted as well. Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
duly noted. Thank you. Mr. Sproles, you're muted.
Okay.
Hello. Which
Hi.
application are you here for, sir?
The 169 Pinehurst Avenue.
169 Pinehurst Avenue. We haven't gotten to that one, sir, and it's not being requested for a deferral yet.
It's scheduled to be discussed tonight sometime. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We haven't gone through our agenda yet. We're still going through the requests for deferral for tonight.
Okay.
So you'll have a chance to speak when we do address this application.
Okay. So I'll just sort of stop my sound for now.
Yes, thank you. And I'm sorry, I was confused. We just deferred. Madam Secretary Treasurer, can you just clarify for me which one did we just defer?
565 Weir, CAVA 186 of 2022, 565 Weir Avenue.
Okay. Okay, that's why I was confused by Ms. Pullman's, because I was looking at 189. Again, the same goes to Ms. Pullman. We haven't addressed this application yet, and it hasn't gone through yet. So you'll have a chance to speak at that time. I think you may have heard me announce a different one. Did I announce a different one? I'm losing.
There may, I believe they're for both 182 or item 6.1 and item 6.8 may have similar people.
Okay, that's where the confusion is from, because I know I was looking at the right one. Okay. Yes, they do have similar people. For 182 and 189. Okay. All right. Is that all, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
I do
For
not see,
deferrals and withdrawals?
yes, I don't see anybody else with their hand raised to defer an application.
Okay, very well. So we'll start the first meeting of our agenda. And that will be item 184, CAV 184 of 2022 at 169 Pinehurst Drive. Again, that's CAV 184 at 169 Pinehurst Drive. If you're interested in speaking to this item, please call 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conference. If you are already in attendance, the applicant will go first, and then you will have a chance to address the committee. So who's here representing the applicant?
Mr. Ted Loxton, I'm just moving him into the meeting.
Very well. While you do that, I will make note of the letters of opposition that we have received thus far. It's Tony Lee and Yola Yang, Yong Wang, David Zhu, and Diane and Gary Prules, Isle and Zach Bajan, Dave and Marie Fallon, Dorothy Archer, Kathy Hopkinson, and Kevin Picot. Those are all the letters that we have on record of opposition. Good evening, Mr. Loxton. How are you?
Good evening. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, thank you. Go ahead,
Good.
sir. The floor is yours.
Yep. And I just got a message from the owners asking if they could be let in as well. I'm not
Yes,
sure if it's
they're in the
under
meeting.
Bell or Surrender, Basra.
They're in the meeting.
we're on.
Okay,
Okay.
very well.
So yeah, good evening. Thanks for hearing our requests. So I guess I'd like to just start out by with that we're removing the request for the height variance. So we heard from both the staff and the neighbors, as per the staff report and the letters of objection, that the increased height isn't being supported. So as a result, I tried dropping the height of this. I reduced the upper floor height from 10 feet to 9 feet and reduced the pitches on the gable. So that brought us down under the 9.5 meters. Or I'm sorry, under the 9 meters. I'm sorry. So, and I'll just go through all my points here. Since we're on this sheet, one of the letters of objection was they were speaking with respect to groundwater. So one of the as part of the building permit process, we're required to submit a certified lot grading plan. This will ensure that the water from your property stays on your property. It's illegal to shed the water onto a neighboring property, so that's the purpose of the grading plan. So that point really isn't a concern in my opinion. Now, as for the ground floor area increase, I want to stress that we're not asking for a variance in lot coverage. So a house of this volume could be built regardless, but we've taken steps to try to make the facade more pleasing. And to put this ask into perspective, it's just over 5% more than what we're allowed. It really translates to 1 room per floor. We feel it's minor in nature, and a portion of this increase is actually because the wall thickness on the 2-story walls. We need to count those as part of our ground floor area. This was inadvertently left out of the letters that were sent to the neighbors, totally unintentional. That letter was sent in good faith. But after the letter had been written, I I was speaking to staff and they had pointed out that I forgot to include those 2-story walls. The next point is in regards to the 3-car garage. With the recent rise in the number of car thefts in the GTA and the fact that adult children are living at home longer, we feel there's real need and demand for a 3-car garage within homes. So we've done the bare minimum for a 3-car garage, each bay being 10 feet by 20 feet. And I just want to note as well that we've stepped the far east bay back about 5 feet, or 5.5 feet actually, just to make the front streetscape a little more pleasing. Also, driving around that neighborhood, I've noticed, and I don't know the size of them, but many houses in the area that do contain a 3-car garage. If we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is just how I've accomplished the getting it down under the 9 meters by reducing the heights. So if we can go to the next slide. Okay, you'll see here that this subject property does pose some challenges, as the lot on the west side of the property, the house is set back. On the east side, it stepped forward. So our ask to move the house forward is to provide a more pleasing streetscape, so that the houses are more in line and that we're not behind the neighbors essentially. So attempts were made actually to keep it behind the line for the most part, but we did step some areas out front just for a more harmonious streetscape, and we've done steps to help soften the impact of this encroachment. And what we're talking about is, I believe it's 1.8 feet. The remaining 7 slides were just letters of support that we received from the neighborhood. I do know that I believe it's 1 or 2 of the supporters did retract their support, but we're hoping that reducing the height to below the 9 meters, we can gain the support of the committee, the staff, the neighbors, and really, be good neighbors. We feel like we've taken appropriate steps to sort of accomplish that. And I'm available for questions.
Okay, members, do you have any questions for Mr. Loxton? Go ahead, Mr. Tulowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question with respect to the variance for floor area. You're asking for 775 square feet more than you're permitted, yet you characterize the variance as just 1 room per floor. Can you expand on why you need 800 square feet more than needed in just 2 rooms?
Yeah, well, I was just trying to put that into some sort of perspective. That in my opinion, it's not a large ask. Now, the committee may feel differently regarding that, but but what we're not asking for an increase in the lot coverage. So what, I guess the size of the rooms, depending, you know, we're talking, for example, a master bedroom, it's not uncommon to have a 400 square feet master bedroom suite, is I guess what I was trying to say with that.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Loxton? From the members? Okay, I see none. I'll start inviting the neighbors who've asked to speak at the meeting. Mr. Sproles, do you want to go first? You have to unmute yourself again. Mr. Sproles?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you, yes.
Beg your pardon. Mr. Tony Lee has his hand raised, and I think it's appropriate that he go first.
Okay. I did see the hand raised, but because you had asked to speak when we first started, I motioned for you first.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Lee, I appreciate it.
All right. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and everyone on the conference. My name is Tony Lee. I'm the property owner of 177 Pinehurst Drive, to the immediate right of 169. We've lived here since the summer of 2012, a bit over 10 years now. First off, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity and the platform to air our concerns and objections to the requested variance by 169. And also, I would like to give a shout out when I, browse through the COA website, understand the process and communications we received lately, which are very clear and helpful. They certainly helped me a lot in mitigating my anxiety and concerns in this regard. Okay, so first off, we have Dell and Surinder are here. I want to get a point out of the way first, right? There's no issue for us with 169 to build a new dwelling, as long as it's within the permitted limit of the town's zoning bylaw. As one of the immediate neighbors, right? It's fair to say that, I'm mostly impacted, for the past 10 years, right? By the messy conditions and challenges that your property has posed, right? To have a new house in the neighborhood, at least it means the mess will be gone. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Now the variances, and I'm happy that Ted just withdraw the height, together with your guys, but I'm not sure the permitted height is 9 meters rather than 9.5. So I want to clarify when Ted was saying 9.5 meters, so what that means. Okay.
And I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I apologize. I had misspoke. I did mean 9 meters. We're at 8.9.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and appreciate Dell, Surinder for consideration of our concerns and withdraw that, right? Now, 8 owners of 8 properties within the proximity of 6 meters of your property have signed and submitted a letter of concerns and objection to the committee, outlining the reason why we are against them, right? In essence of time, I just want to highlight on a couple. Originally, I thought I would highlight the height. Now, if you withdraw that one, I'm not going to talk about that one anymore, but rather the floor area, number 1. Okay, the max permitted by the city is 29% in ratio, which is 410.86 square meters. Translated into square footage, where most people, understand, is 4,422.46 square feet. To me, that's a large size house in our community. And the variance you guys are requesting is 34.12% in ratio, which is 483.40 square meters, or 5,203.27 square feet. That's the difference is 781 square feet. Okay, I don't think this is small variance or minor variance, right? Just an idea how big 781 square foot is, okay? It can be a good 3-bedroom condo for a 4-people family nowadays. Or imagine 7 to 8, 10 by 10 bedrooms. That's why I can understand, right? When Michael was asking the question, are you talking about just 2 rooms, one on the first floor, one on the second floor? It looked like 7 to 8, 10 by 10 rooms you are asking for. How is that a minor variance, right? Think about, your surrounding properties here in this area. Most of them are bungalows and small size houses, right? And yours apparently coming in with the humongous size here is not in proportion of your lot size, right? It's oversized and it's not permitted by the zoning bylaw, right? And it will make your property overpowering, intimidating even. If you look from the street and you're so large, right? And all the other properties are just so small in comparison. And how can you say appreciate your own property while at the same time others are kind of at the cost of others, right? You don't do it that way. Like to me, that's a exceeding ask. Okay, that's why I'm a little passionate in kind of speaking about this, right? So,
Mr. Wang, we're over the 5-minute mark now. So if we're going to have everyone else speak, I'd like you to summarize.
I'm going to summarize. I'm going to be really quick. And, on the notice of public hearing, I didn't see the setback, right, of the front yard. Apparently, Ted was talking about it as 1.87 feet, basically, right? They're asking about 5.57 meters. That's going to block. If you look at the landscape of the street of Pinehurst, it bear right, and every property kind of have the same offset or setback to the street itself, right? And yours is kind of, if you put forth yours, it's going to leave behind the 2 neighbor property. And that's going to change the flow of the street overall, right? If the zoning bylaw allows you to have, whatever variance minus 1 meter already, why you are asking the, additional one without considering the other properties, right? So in summary, right, I don't see any reasonable grounds for the variances. If approved, it's going to create a very bad precedent, right? And we appreciate the detailed and professional comments by the town's planning department posted on the website. When I view them, I really see how professional and detailed their comments are. And I would like to thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the COA for hearing my concerns and objections. I hope the requested variances are denied and a good living environment for both current and future residents are protected and maintained. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Madam Secretary, how many of the neighbors that have written in for letters of opposition have asked to speak?
Just Mr. Lee and Mr. Sproles. They're the only 2.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Loxton, I saw your hand up. You will get a chance to respond to the comments made. Just take note of everything that you want to respond to, and then you'll have with Mr. Surinder and the time allotted to you at the end to respond to any of the comments made. It's just
Very good. Thank you.
go ahead, Mr. Sproles.
Thank you very much. And I'll reflect some of the comments that Tony made about being grateful for the opportunity to make some remarks, and in what appears to be certainly a very fair and open process here. A lot of what I have to say will sort of speak to Tony's comments, so I'll be relatively brief. I'd like to start out by saying that I'm finding it quite difficult to follow the changes and the modifications that have been talked about without seeing this presented in the same kind of detail that we originally had. The height and the floor coverage, the garage area. There were two other variances that the planning committee picked up on, which had to do with backyard setback, and there was one other one. So it's a bit hard for me to kind of process all of this and think about the new package that is being offered. And I think that's a lot to ask of a layman who just lives in the neighborhood. Nevertheless, I'd like to emphasize that the objections to the new house on 169 Pinehurst don't come from just one neighbor. It comes from 8 households within a whole neighborhood. So there's clearly some pretty widespread concerns here. The majority of these families live in homes of modest size that fit comfortably within the property boundaries. These owners are generally tend their generously treed lots, resulting in an attractive neighborhood with a balance between openness and privacy. So it's a beautiful neighborhood with lots of open space and trees, but opportunity for privacy on the part of the neighbors. And I have a feeling that that would not be continued if some version of the house that's being talked about is being built. A more general point is the bylaws that govern the sizes and positions of homes on private properties in Oakville they're there for a reason, namely to ensure that each resident can live in a reasonably sized personal space. In my opinion, these size limits should be enforced on behalf of the citizens of Oakville, unless there are really compelling reasons for some sort of change. In this particular application, I certainly don't consider the rationale to be compelling by a long shot. Now, what was initially an excessive height, which now may be up to the maximum, that was a major concern. The floor area is still much greater than is allowed. And again, I just don't understand why the town makes bylaws and then doesn't necessarily stick to them. And this particular variance strikes me as being major and excessive. As far as I could tell from the original information that we were given, the house that was going to be built would have intruded on the neighborhood rather than sort of joined the neighborhood. My wife and I have lived here since 1979 on a corner lot not far from 169. We've seen people make renovations to their houses over the years, but they've all been quite modest, and the general character of the neighborhood has not changed. This new house, as originally proposed, would have and maybe will change the character of the neighborhood considerably. I also was encouraged that the planning committee itself had registered what to me seemed pretty strong objections to the plans that had been submitted. And to me, that indicates that this is a rather unusual request. So as I say, I feel what I read and what I was sent would have constituted a house that was overly large, quite exceptional in the neighborhood, but not in a positive fashion. I need to see everything that's now modified and going to be proposed. But I have a feeling it still wouldn't sway me. And I would urge the Committee of Adjustment to strongly urge the Committee of Adjustment to reject this application. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sproles. Just to clarify that the variances before us now are the increased garage floor area and the residential floor area because the maximum height has been dropped. So whatever you saw in the past has been amended to what is before us today. Mr. Loxton, I don't know if both you and the applicants want to speak, but I will provide you time to speak to the points that were raised, and then we'll take the matter into committee. But before I do that, I wonder if the members have any questions of Mr. Lee or of Mr. Sproles at this time. Okay, I see none. Very well. We'll go ahead and we'll proceed with your time.
Okay, thank you. And I do know that Dal and Surinder would both like to make some comments after I do. And thank you both, Mr. Lee and Mr. Sproles, for your comments. I guess one of the ideas behind reducing the height was to try to please the neighbors, please everybody. Ideally, if it were up to me, yeah, I would like the additional height, but we're trying to do the good neighbor thing and do what we can. As for the neighborhood, I love driving through that neighborhood. I don't live in that neighborhood, but I'd love to. And the last thing that I want to do and the owners want to do is sort of disrupt it. Now there are some very large homes in that area, and variances have been requested and granted for floor area ratios larger than what we are asking for. Like up Pinehurst, Arley, there are some very large houses. And I think that's what I had to say in response to those comments. If I could ask that you let the owners.
And you've addressed the minimum rear yard shortage and the lot coverage calculations that the town thinks you've missed.
I'm sorry, my speaker cut out. Say that one more time.
I said, and if you've addressed the minimum rear yard and the lot coverage calculations that the town feels that you may have missed.
As far as I am concerned, what the variance in front of us is asking for is correct. That we're not seeking any other variances.
Okay, and they are prepared to stay within those limits should there be an error in calculation.
Correct. And I'm just going to
there's a discrepancy here.
Yeah, there is, according to the town. Maybe we can ask the planner, Mr. Chairman, go ahead. You go ahead and address us, and then we'll will resolve that question. Did you have something further
Yeah.
to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to address some of the concerns. There are some older bungalows in the neighborhood, but it is a neighborhood that's going through a transition, and that's equally, there's interspersed with large homes too. You know, you're going to get that while a neighborhood is in transition. And given the cost of lot value in this neighborhood, no one is going to tear down a bungalow and replace it with another bungalow. That's just not financially feasible for people to do when they go to sell that house down the road. So, I mean, regardless, it's going to be a double story that's going to be replacing a lot of these old homes. And how much space people need, that's a matter of subjective need. I know some people are retired and there's only 2 people living in the house. Well, then a small bungalow suffices. But when you've got adult children that can't afford to move out, that are going to be living with you, and you've got 2 sets of aging parents who also cannot afford to be on their own with the current housing climate, then your needs are going to be different than an elderly retired couple where there's only 2 people. And it sounds like a lot of square footage, but the reason that there was a discrepancy, and Tony, I want to assure you this was not done to deliberately deceive you in any way. I took the square footage from what the drawings were, and that's what I provided to you. It was because the open to above area is included, is doubled, and we didn't realize that. But in terms of what we thought it was about 600-ish. And that does amount, in my opinion, to 1 extra room on each floor. Even if we go back and we reduce square footage, it will not change the front elevation of the house, just because the house is facing west. Now, if you were going to build a custom home in that location, no doubt you would want all your windows and light on that west facing elevation. So, you know, we can do things to reduce the square footage, but it's not really going to change the front elevation of the house. So that's something to keep in mind too. And when you're talking about, the other thing I wanted to clarify, Tony, I felt like there is some sort of misunderstanding on where you think the house is going to be, because you said that it was going to be in front of both neighboring houses, and that's actually not the case at all. The house when we're looking at the front of the house, you're on the left of us, and the White House on the right of us is actually set forward quite, I'm going to guess, about 12 feet. It's what we're asking for is about 1.5 feet. It's not anywhere close to being ahead of the other house. And Gary's house on the corner on Elmhurst, if you take a look at the drawing on the map, it's actually closer to Pinehurst Drive than what our proposed dwelling is. So again, you're not, it won't be at a place on the way the houses are aligned on that street. You know, it's
Okay. Is that it? Is that all your comments? This is not going to be a back and forth. There's a procedure to this meeting. Everyone gets allotted their time to speak, and then we take it into committee for a discussion. So I've allotted a little bit more of a free time so that everyone can speak, but we can't afford, or we'll be here till 11 and 12, and our bylaw only allows us to be here until 10. So I respect everyone's comments. I respect all your points of views. This is why the Committee of Adjustment is here. People do need variances to seek relief from certain bylaws, and that's what makes our job very difficult. And we do have to go by every application on its merit, and regardless of what's being built in the neighborhood and what kind of variances they were allotted. I just have a question of our planner, Ms. Shreya. I can't see her on my, I have to tussle back and forth because I'm on a, there she is. Sharda, can you comment on the 2 missed variances that you feel like may have been missed in this application? Because there seems to be a back and forth on them, and I just want to put those to bed before we take the matter into committee.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. As per calculation, there is a discrepancy that they have missed the minimum rear yard, which is permitted as 10.50, but the rear yard measures as 9.99 meters. And the another missed variance is for the lot coverage. So the permitted lot coverage is 25%, and it's been calculated here as 26.19%.
Okay.
These are the 2 variances missed.
And just for the benefit of the neighbors, because I don't want to go into a back and forth on this, should these variances be indeed miscalculated as per your calculations, what is the next step? They either have to abide by it or they do not get a building permit, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. I hope that clarifies things for Mr. Spruce and Mr. Lee. If these variances have been indeed missed, they will not get a building permit, just in the off chance that, you know, the decision goes that way or this way. You understand what next steps are. Are there any questions of Mr. Surinder and his wife, or the applicant's agent, Mr. Loxton, before we take the matter into committee?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to clarify the distance from the back.
You don't need to. You don't need to, because we have the drawings. We've been to our site visits. We understand that calculation errors happen, but I just wanted the neighbors to understand what next steps are, because I didn't want to have to entertain a back and forth on a debate of what these calculations can or cannot be. Mr. Flemington, did you put your hand up?
Yes.
Did you have a question, sir?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just am curious, the letters of opposition were included within the staff report that gets sent out, of which the applicant and their agent do receive ahead of this meeting, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So, and then what my question is to the applicant and to their agent, from once that was received, was there any meetings or dialogue that was had with the citizens that had presented their letters of opposition?
No, we had meetings prior, not after.
Okay.
Yeah, we did, at the time, these neighbors didn't express a lot of these concerns. So, you know, we did actually leave our phone number and email and, you know, encourage them to contact us if there was concerns, but we actually didn't hear back on those concerns until we received those letters, like, you know, 3 days ago.
Okay.
But we
Okay. So,
thank you.
Sorry, you're just muted. And then just as a second question, I noticed, you know, as part of the presentation by the applicant's agent this evening, I believe they mentioned that there were 7 letters of support. These letters, however, we just have seen them tonight. They were not submitted prior to, which is great. I mean, that's how you should do it. If it hasn't been done prior to, we do need to see them, but I just wanted to clarify that we did not get those in advance.
Okay.
Can I just
Mr.
respond to that?
Yeah.
Okay, so they were sent in, and I had inadvertently not blacked out Dallin Surinder's phone numbers, and so they weren't included in that in your package, and that's why I included them here.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you, Mr. Okay, Mr. Lee, I will allow you that leeway, but go ahead, 30 seconds. You're
I had
muted.
to unmute myself. Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I had to clarify that, right? So number one, we surrender. When you're
Just
at our
address
door,
me, just
yeah,
address me.
okay. When they came to our door, we spoke in the face and say we are against it. And when we met Dell again the other day, when he was here to cleaning the mess of the property, somebody complains, right? And then I talk about it as well. And then he said, okay, we are gonna submit regardless and let's see how it goes. Okay, that's one. And about the 2 letters of support, there's no 7 letters of support. If you can prove, provide that proof. There are only 2. However, these 2 already retracted their support, and they are now on the 8 properties of against the application. Over.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lee, thank you. This does not benefit us at all for the back and forth of who said what. Honestly, I've read it into the preamble. We're not here to solve the problems that are between the neighbors. We are just urging you to be able to coexist and be neighborly towards each other. And everyone has submitted their opposition and their concerns, and now it's up to the committee to make their decision accordingly. Members, I'm in your hands. Who would like to make a motion? Let's have a discussion and bring this matter into committee. Go ahead, Mr. Talowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, given the opposition of staff and the residents and the fact that there's additional variances required, I would have hoped that the applicants would have requested a deferral to work this out, but as is their right, they chose to proceed. And while I appreciate the willingness to reduce the height, I don't believe that's the main issue that we're faced with tonight. I believe it's the size and the massing of the building. And that's the main concern here. And with respect to the size and the mass, I don't see any real attempt to mitigate that. We see regularly buildings coming forward that are greater than the bylaw permits, but there's been attempts to reduce the size of the second floor, move the massing of the second floor back or to the center of the building. I don't see any of that here. And as a result, I cannot find that the variance on floor area is either meeting the intent of the bylaw or desirable for this neighborhood. And while I appreciate that nobody's going to replace the bungalow with the bungalow and that a 2-story building is permitted, when an applicant is looking for such a significant variance from the bylaw, I believe it's their responsibility to do everything possible to mitigate any potential impact. Madam Chair, I would also note the significant opposition that we have in the neighborhood. But on this basis, I'm going to move that this application be denied.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Talowski. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Mr. Flemington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am in support of the motion. I think Member Talowski has outlined the fact that, with regards to the massing of the building and not doing anything with regard to trying to reduce that is paramount to, that one variance. In addition, again, as well, that there are possibly some other variances that maybe have been missed. And as well, I just to the members, the citizens that are here, and to the applicant, I mean, this process is there so that neighbors can have their input onto what is being built, And I think the committee recognizes that not everything is going to be built to the bylaws, but that's why this committee is here, in order to hear from the applicants and the neighbors. Noting that there were many citizens that were in opposition, I do also think that this could have been something that could have been deferred so that the applicant could have further had discussions with the neighbors as to what their intent was. And also recognizing that, you know, they did remove the height variance, which does show that they are, you know, receptive to some of the feedback by the neighbors. So I am in favor of the motion that this application be denied.
Thank you, Mr. Flemington. I need to toggle between my screens to see Mr. Hardcastle, just in case he wanted to say something.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Like my colleagues, I have some significant reservations with respect to the height that's being proposed and the outstanding variances that have not been addressed with this. The words of both Mr. Flemington and Mr. Tulowski are significant. I won't repeat them, but I do share them, and I will be supporting the motion on the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. I just have to make one comment for the benefit of the neighbors that yes, there are a lot of bungalows in the area, and that yes, there is areas of transition. I will give that to the applicant. However, despite the fact that the 2 stories are as of right, that doesn't necessarily mean that an overbuild is something that is a guarantee. I just had to make that comment. All those in support of this application being denied, and I have to toggle between, okay, Mr. Tulowski and Mr. Flemington is accounted for, Mr. Hardcastle, and myself. The application has been denied, none opposed. Hopefully you can go back and to the drawing board and come back with something that both the town and the neighbors can be more amenable to. We wish you all the best. Have a good evening, everyone. Okay. Application CAV 185 of 2022 at 325 Watson Avenue. Again, it's CAV 185 of 2022 at 325 Watson Avenue. We've got Mr. Jason Heather as the agent.
Okay, he's been moved into the meeting.
Okay. I think we lost Mr. Flemington. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Heather.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of committee. Jason Heater, Hicks Design Studio, on behalf of our clients at 325 Watson Avenue. We're in front of you tonight seeking 4 variances to the RL 3-0 Special Provision 10 zone for a new 2-story Georgian style replacement dwelling on an existing double lot. I'll just briefly speak. We do have planning support for the application. I'll just briefly speak to the variances in order. If I could go to page, let's go to page 2 here. So the first one's residential floor area, 29% permitted. We're seeking just under 1% additional, or approximately 13.3 square meters. The RFA is well under what would have been allowed as of right if the lots were severed. They are to single lots, but are have not been broken apart. So it's currently in its double lot configuration. We've made attempts to lower the garage roof on the left-hand side of the house and step back the small office bump out on the right-hand side as well. This breaks up the massing of the home. If I can go to slide number 7, please. Much of the additional GFA is based on a need to include a minimum of 25% gross floor area above a garage. Otherwise, we had to include the whole area. So this little area shown in red is the amount that has needed to be included in order to keep this variance from being much larger. We certainly believe this house complies with the guidelines for infill housing. It's a traditional Georgian house and fits the character of the neighborhood and is quite representative of actually what exists on the lot currently. Second variance, if I can go to page 5, for dwelling height, we're asking for 0.48 meters additional. There's a discrepancy in established grade and finished floor on this house of approximately 0.7 meters, which makes up all of the requested variance. You'll see that red portion is what we are seeking the variance for. It is not for the entirety of the roof on the home. It is just for that center mass element. Page 6 will deal with the coverage variance, 19% permitted, 22.8 requested. Again, much of this is due to the inclusion of the 2 red elements, which are single-story covered porch features. No overlook concerns for neighboring dwellings. We meet all side yard, front yard, rear yard setback requirements. We're actually providing ample side yard setbacks for this home. And the final variance for garage area is represented in the purple. We're looking to include for a bit of additional tandem parking and storage in the rear of the garage. It will present as a standard 2-car garage from the street, again with that dropped single-story roof line. We believe the variances certainly meet the 4 tests in the Planning Act, and the house represents great infill housing design. I'm available for any questions whatsoever.
Thank you, Mr. Heather. Are there any questions at this time? Madam Secretary, has anyone raised their hand to speak to this item or called in?
There's no one at this time.
Okay, very well. If there are no questions, we'll take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Flemington.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I have reviewed the application submitted by the applicant, as well as the town's written staff report, which I do note is in support of this application. Also, having taken into account comments this evening by the applicant's agent, noting that there were no oral comments made this evening with regards to opposition to the application. Also noting that there were no written opposition for this application. I do find and would like to thank the applicant and their agent for noting what they have done with regards to the development of the building, as far as the dealing with the massing, and as well with regards to the garage, noting that that is within the interior. So I think those items give me comfort that they don't cause a negative impact on the neighbors. So I would like to move that this application be approved as applied for, finding that it does meet all 4 tests of the Planning Act. And I would like to include the following 2 conditions. that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated August 26, 2022. And as well, our second standard condition that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Very well, thank you for that submission. Is there a discussion on that proposal? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman, committee members. I think I'm sticking around, so.
Yeah, we've got you right next. So CAV 187 of 2022 at 1067 Cedar Grove Boulevard. Again, and that's CAV 187 of 2022 at 1067 Cedar Grove Boulevard. If you're interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Again, the number is 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conference. I will note that we do have 2 letters of support from a Mr. Al-Bayrak and a Mr. Abdusalam. Go ahead, Mr. Either.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Madam Chairman, committee members, thank you again for your time. Jason Heater, for the record, Hicks Design Studio on behalf of our clients at 1067 Cedar Grove. We're here seeking 3 variances. They're all interrelated and they're what we would consider quite technical in nature. We did have a previous Committee of Adjustment application in front of you for some other items that was approved. What we're looking for right now, the owner is looking to do an additional parking space underground. So if I can go to page 5, please. That red hatched portion is an additional parking area that is in the front yard, completely subterranean to the property. So there is no impact of any built form on the neighboring dwellings. It does not increase the size of the house. It does not change any of the coverage related elements. It is purely below grade. So the first variance, I'll just speak to them quickly in order. Garage wall projection. Measured again from the longest wall in the front face. So we now project beyond that front wall, greater than the 1.5 meters allowable, albeit again, this is all underground. There is nothing that physically projects beyond. So the house does not change whatsoever based on this addition. Tied to that would be the dwelling depth. The dwelling depth must be taken from the rear porch column to this new front garage face wall. Again, the dwelling depth of the house has not changed in its above ground format. This is purely a measurement that would be taken below ground level. And the same can be said for the third variance for the front yard setback, proposed 4.18. Again, it's taken to that front garage wall that is below grade and completely submerged underground. We have had an arborist take a look at the city and town trees. We've done our due diligence to pull and maintain the front face of this subterranean garage back beyond the TPZ of the existing tree that's on site. And we believe that these variances certainly meet the 4 tests, and I would answer any questions. And again, sorry, staff are supportive, and there were 2 letters of support on file.
Thank you, Mr. Heather. Are there any questions of Mr. Heather at this time? I see none. Has anyone called in, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
There's no one at this time.
Application?
There's no one at this time.
Okay, very well. Then we'll take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Mr. Hardcastle, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having undertaken my site visit, having reviewed the materials, including the written staff report and the drawings, and having heard the presentation from the applicant, I am satisfied that the requested variances conform to the four tests of the Act. I'll put forward a motion of approval, subject to two conditions. I would note that, as Mr. Heather had indicated, because of the nature of the garage structure, these are really they are very technical variances, and when assessing them on a means of impact, the impact is minimal in terms of minimal, if anything, on the existing established neighborhood. So this motion for approval will be subject to two conditions, and those conditions being that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated August 29th, 2022, and that the approval will expire, will expire within 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued.
Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members. of
Thank
committee,
you.
Thank you for your time.
Have a good night.
You too.
Okay, application CAV 188 of 2022 at 2069 Glen Forest Crescent. Again, it's CAV 188 of 2022 at 2069 Glen Forest Crescent. If you would like to speak to this application, please call 905-815-6095 and staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conference.
I've moved Justin into the
Mr.
meeting.
Tenich.
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair and members. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so my name is Justin Tenich, Cedar Springs Landscape Group. I'm the agent for the homeowner of 2069 Glen Forest Crescent, the application in question. If I could just speak for a few moments here, understanding that the application has been supported by the planning department, I'd just like to take a moment to clarify a few things. Our application is for a proposed accessory structure with an area of 20.07 square meters. As noted in the planning review, there was an error in the initial site data that was provided. So looking at the bottom right corner of this page 1 of the presentation, the existing lot coverage is actually only 24.3%. So we're actually only asking for a permitted lot coverage of 25.8%. So if I could have that revised in this, that would be great. And then just further to that, if I could address the letters of opposition that were written quickly. It's my understanding that there was some confusion about the nature of the variances requested. The homeowner managed to speak to the author of the first letter of opposition, and they expressed that they were confused by the wording of the variance request, which speaks about, just to read it for a moment, it's to permit the maximum lot coverage to be, initially it was written as 37%, which is now corrected, but then it says for the detached dwelling, which is greater than 7 meters in height. So when we explained the actual nature of the structure proposed, if you could go to page 2 of the presentation, you can see on the front elevation that it's actually only 10 foot 6.5. So I'm not sure if it was sent in time to the committee, but that neighbor had asked to redact their letter of opposition. And we hope to speak to the other neighbors as well to clarify that to them. So to conclude, I just want to point out that this is just a variance for the 0.8% additional lot coverage. And I feel that this meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act. And I would gladly take any questions.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Tenich. Any questions regarding the cabana accessory structure? Okay, I see none. I will note, you did mention the letters of opposition, one of which you've addressed. You also have some letters of support that I note that are on file as well. Are there any questions of Mr. Tanage at this time? Okay, I see none. Who would like to move a motion? If no one has called in, Madam Secretary.
No one's called in at this time.
Okay, very well. Go ahead, Mr. Talowski. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I move a motion, a quick question for staff. The recommended conditions reference the original October 12th site plan and elevation. The applicant has put up corrected plans tonight, both of which were dated November 14th. Would it be appropriate to change that recommendation to reflect the November 14th drawings as opposed to the October 12th drawings that contain the error?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that would be appropriate to change the date of the drawings to November 4.
Thank you.
14.
With that clarification, Madam Chair, I'm going to move that the application be approved as amended to reflect the variance for 25.8% coverage. I find that this variance will have no impact and meets the test of the Planning Act. I would note both letters of support and opposition from the community. I believe the applicant has adequately addressed the letters of opposition. And I would make approval subject to the accessory building being built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated November 14th, 2022, and that the approval expires within 2 years if the building permit hasn't issued.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Talowski. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Does anyone else hear the echo that I'm hearing, or is it just on my part? Okay, thank you. Application CAV 189 of 2022 at 2036 Waters Edge Drive. Again, this is CAV 189 of 2022 at 2036 Water Edge Drive. If you're interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conference at that time. We do have letters of opposition, 4 of them, from Ms. Karen Pullman, Mr. Sanjay Patel, and Alan Pritz, Sarlene Weiser, and Manuel and Niki Radovicach. The agent on record is Mr. Demchek.
Yeah, he's in the meeting.
Okay.
Sorry, members of committee, just having technical difficulties there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Paul Demchek with Vittori Management. I'm the planning consultant on behalf of the applicant this evening for 2036 Waters Edge Drive. I prepared a brief presentation for the benefit of the committee and residents and would like to just take everyone through it briefly this evening. Next slide, please. So the subject property located at 2036 Waters Edge Drive is one of the largest lots on the south side of Waters Edge Drive adjacent to Lake Ontario. The proposed development contemplates the reconstruction of the existing dwelling in a new 2-story, 5-bedroom single detached home with an overall floor area of approximately 909 square meters on a lot that is approximately 2,690 square meters. This detached dwelling covers 27.7% of the property, which totals 650 square meters. The height of the dwelling is 10.5 meters, which is compliant with the zoning bylaw, and the existing vehicular access on the western portion of the property is being maintained, with one new access proposed on the eastern portion of the property. The proposed dwelling is located towards the center of the subject property, which does allow for ample setbacks from Lake Ontario and the Water's Edge Drive frontage. Next slide, please. There's 4 variances before the committee this evening, being a proposed increase to the driveway width, a proposed increase to the maximum garage area, a variance to the window well encroachment, as well as a variance to the maximum dimension of a skylight. I will just share briefly for the committee and for the residents this evening some drawings of the proposed development, and then we'll individually go through each of the proposed variances. Next slide, please. This is the proposed site plan of the proposed development. You can see that the proposed setting of the dwelling has been located significantly set back from Water's Edge Drive to allow for the new driveway configuration. The proposed garage is accessed from the western side of the proposed dwelling. And there's ample setbacks that's shown in the shaded gray, which does allow for the required access easement that's required from the Conservation Authority. I will note that my client has already obtained a permit from Conservation Halton as it relates to the proposed development in advance of proceeding with the application before the committee tonight and a future building permit. Next slide, please. This is the proposed front elevation. I would characterize the proposed dwelling, albeit compliant with the zoning bylaw. It is obviously an estate style dwelling that is consistent with what is typically seen along many waterfront properties along Oakville. Next slide, please. This is the rear elevation. Next slide, please. And these are the side elevations. On the image on the top left of the screen is the elevation with the proposed garage. And the bottom right is the elevation, which is showing the location of where the window well encroachments are located. Next slide, please. Just for the benefit of the committee, I will take everyone just through each of the variances individually. So the driveway width and the intent of regulating a maximum driveway width is to ensure that there's reasonable vehicular access that can be provided on a property that does not dominate the front yard area. I will note that the majority of the driveway width on the property is compliant with the requirements of the zoning bylaw, with the exception of the width of the driveway that's located right in front of the proposed garage that's shaded in yellow. And you can see there's a diagonal line where the shaded yellow area is, and that's the measurement of the driveway width. And this is the only portion of the driveway where it is not compliant with the requirements of the zoning bylaw. I will note that this widest portion of the driveway is mitigated through ample setbacks from the street. There's landscape features that exist, including the existing trees that are being maintained at the frontage of the property. And the significant setbacks reduces the impact of the portion of the driveway that's the widest from the streetscape. Next slide, please. In terms of the garage area, again, the intent of the garage area provision is to ensure that dwellings do not contain uncharacteristically large parking garages within the building footprint, and further do not negatively impact the streetscape of a proposed dwelling. In this case, the proposed dwelling design of the garage situates the garage doors along the western elevation, which mitigates the impacts of the garage from a streetscape perspective. And further, the garage is appropriately sized relative to the lot size and relative to the dwelling footprint. And further, the design of this garage is mitigated through the design and architecture of the proposed dwelling. Next slide, please. In terms of the window well encroachment, so again, the window wells that are seeking a variance are located on the eastern side of the dwelling. And the intent of the window well encroachment is to ensure that window wells do not negatively impact grading and drainage on adjacent properties, and to ensure that adequate access exists on a given minimum yard setback. I will note that the proposed window well encroachments are all located along this eastern side of the dwelling, which include a setback from the lot lines of 2.34 meters, which is in excess of the zoning bylaw requirement of 1.8 meters. And as such, the window well encroachment allows for an adequate setback of 1.2 meters to the window well from the property line, which is intended to ensure that appropriate grading and drainage can occur, as well as access through the eastern side yard for maintenance purposes. Next slide, please. In terms of the skylight dimension, I will note there's only one skylight that is not compliant with the zoning bylaw, and that's what's highlighted here in yellow on the screen. And the intent of the maximum skylight dimension of the zoning bylaw is to ensure that roof lines are architecturally designed to be compatible within a given neighborhood, and further that privacy and overlook impacts are mitigated. I will note that the proposed skylight width is compliant with the bylaw provisions. However, the length of 3 meters is greater than the permitted length of 2.4 meters. It's also noted that the total area of the proposed skylight is 3.5 square meters, whereas the zoning bylaw provision allows an area of up to 5.76 square meters. It's my opinion the proposed dimension of the skylight and placement of the skylight on the dwelling are not anticipated to cause any overlook or privacy impacts, and the design, shape, and area of the skylight feature is appropriate for the proposed estate style home. Next slide, please. I would note, just as a brief conclusion, the proposed development again replaces an existing detached dwelling within the urban area. And given it's one of the largest waterfront lots on Waters Edge Drive, the proposal represents a gradual growth and change within the neighborhood, while providing for an executive dwelling that is commonly found again on waterfront Oakville lots. Again, for the benefit of the committee and neighbors, I would respectfully characterize the variances as technical in nature for the proposed dwelling. The proposed dwelling size, including coverage, setbacks, floor area, and height, are permitted as of right, and the proposed variances deal with the non-built form matters that do not impact the massing of the proposed dwelling. I would note, again, just further for the benefit of the committee, there's been some correspondence related to Airbnb usage of the existing property. I would note that this Airbnb was done by the previous tenant of the property that has moved out as of November 10th of this year from the dwelling. My client, as of today, has filed, just further for the benefit of everyone, an affidavit to the town of Oakville confirming that they intend to use this property as their primary residence. I know this is not a land use planning matter, but I just want to flag it for everyone's benefit. Further, just in conclusion, I've prepared a planning rationale report, and I have also read the town staff report, which do support the proposed variances on the property, meeting the 4 tests under the Planning Act. Just in conclusion, I'm before the committee and would be happy to assist in answering any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Demchak. Are there any questions of Mr. Demchak at this time? Okay, I see none. Madam Secretary, has anyone raised their hand or asked to speak to this application?
Not at this time. So if there's anybody who would like to speak to this application, if you raise your hand, I will be able to move you into the meeting. I'll just give, there is people in attendance. Perhaps they don't want to speak, so maybe I'll just give them another, a few seconds to see if they would like to raise their hand so I can move them into the meeting. Yeah, I'm just going to move someone into the meeting. I've moved Farouk Kazim into the meeting.
For some reason, my camera does not seem to be functional. Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Kazim.
I have a question. I live.
Sorry, I need their name and their address for the record.
Yeah, my name is Farouk Kazim, K-A-Z-I-M. First name F-A-R-O-U-K. I live at 10 Third Line, which is about 6 properties over from the subject property in question.
Thank you.
I have a question about the adjectival use of the term estate property. Are there any other estate properties west of Third Line along the lake between Third Line and Bronte?
Okay, is that your only concern?
Well, I have a concern because it appears that while this property may be in line with the regulations, the scale and magnitude is certainly different from the surrounding properties.
Okay, and how does that affect your property?
Well, it doesn't affect my property per se, it affects the neighborhood.
Okay.
I'm just wondering that, you know, I understand that we're all in a period of transition, but I think this is a huge, major step. Maybe it's, I wouldn't say too grand. I mean, you know, the land is there, but I just wondered whether it's appropriate, considering from an aesthetic point of view, what is around on the other side of the street, along the lake, etc.
Okay, now I understand your question, sir. Yes, we can definitely get that information from you, from Mr. Demchak, if he can comment on it. But I've allotted your time, so if that's your only concern,
That's my only concern right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Demchak will make note of all the concerns of the interested parties, and then he'll have the opportunity to respond as the agent of the applicant. Ms. Secretary Treasurer, is there anyone else who has any concerns that would like to address the committee?
I see no one else with their hand raised at this time.
Okay, very well. Mr. Demchak, do you have an answer for that question?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, I've not prepared I would suggest a detailed inventory of waterfront lots in that geographic location that are, you know, I would suggest defined as estate style dwellings. However, I would note that obviously there's been a number of infill properties that have and are currently undergoing redevelopment along the waterfront in this immediate context, including one that I was recently before the committee on Bayview Drive, I believe at the previous Committee of Adjustment meeting. And in this instance on Waters Edge Drive, what we had desired to, I guess, articulate and design on the property was a proposed dwelling that was obviously fully compliant with lot coverage or floor area ratio, all required setbacks, and especially setbacks, and actually even greater setbacks than what is required, for example, from the front yard to mitigate those impacts as it relates to the proposed massing of the dwelling, noting that this is one of the largest lots on Waters Edge Drive, and it will notably alter the existing streetscape. So the question is, how do you do that in as sensibly as possible? And I think we've tried to accomplish that as best as possible in this instance.
Okay, thank you. If there are...
I've moved Karen Pullman into the meeting.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Pullman.
Hi, this is my first time being at a meeting such as this one, but I understand that there was a number of letters that were drafted, including my own,
So
that outlined our concerns. So I trust that those will be considered. I'm just a support Farouk, and I can actually respond to the question. Being a resident in this community for quite a period of time, there are no other estate dwellings of this size and type between Third Line and Bronte Road on the waterfront. There's a number of condominium developments on Waters Edge Drive that are, there's elderly community members and so forth there. So it's a quite modest community. That being said, development will happen. And I just would ask that the affiliation of this property in an established residential area with this AMG Lux renter has subjected the community to parties and a lot of other things over the summer. And I think people were tolerating it because they thought that, well, actually there has been numerous complaints, but they have been waiting for the property to be developed. And now when we see the development, we see it's more of a hotel or an estate, I guess, that's out of character with the community. So we just would like assurances that the minor variances will not actually exacerbate the already large out of style dwelling in the community. And I know that I believe that the window wells are to accommodate a basketball court, for example. Again, unprecedented, but development happens. But we just want to ensure that the driveway isn't just going to be facilitating the luxury cars that are going to be parked there by Airbnb tenants in the future, such as AMG Lux, which the owner already was affiliated with, is in their driveway. So
sorry,
just trying to look at the overall. Thank you.
No, and we appreciate your submissions. We do have your letter. We have Mr. Kazim's letter as well.
Sorry,
we have.
Sorry to interrupt. I actually need Ms. Pullman to have her name and address. If she could read that out for the record.
Oh, no problem. So it's Karen, Puhlmann. My address is 2010 Waters Edge Drive. I believe 4 houses away from it.
No, that's perfect. I just need your address. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other neighbors that are interested in addressing the committee?
I see no one at this time.
Okay. Mr. Demchak, you did mention that your client did write or sign an affidavit that they will be using this home as their primary residence.
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair, that is correct. My client's filed an affidavit to that effect. I have spoken also with my client in depth about the matter related to the previous tenant being, sorry, I may be saying it incorrectly, but I believe it's AMG. They were previously in the property. They've now moved out. I can say, in speaking through my client, he's quite sympathetic to the concerns of the neighbors. Obviously, it's not the intent for this property to be an Airbnb, and obviously the issues that they've experienced. As I said, I think there's a lot of empathy for what has transpired. But no, this property is solely intended for their principal residence.
Okay. Are there any questions or follow-up with Mr. Demchak before we take the matter into committee from the members? I don't see everybody, so you have to speak up.
Yes, I do have one question, Mr. Demchak. Well, two questions, very short. One, that affidavit that has been signed, is there a time limit on it? And secondly, will this property be used in any way for the rental of luxury cars? To house luxury cars?
Okay.
For rental?
Mr. Kazim, I've allowed your questions to go
Thank you.
forth, but you should address me directly.
Sorry. Madam Chairman, I'm sorry.
We'll get your answers for you, but once I've ascertained those answers, we will have to take the matter into committee. That's why I asked you to be very clear with all your concerns. Go ahead, Mr. Demchak, if you can please answer those questions for the benefit of the neighbor as well as the committee.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, and to the residents. There is no time limit that I'm aware of as it pertains to the affidavit. And then further, there's no, as far as I'm aware, there's absolutely no rental anticipated for any vehicles on the property. The size of the garage is solely intended for my client and his personal use, for him and his family. The garage design, again, for the benefit of the committee, is intended to be quite discreet from a streetscape perspective. to try to mitigate impacts as much as possible.
Okay, Mr. Demchak, we don't have a lot of knowledge into the background that the neighbors have been speaking about, but one thing does come to mind. Perhaps they feel that this is similar to the large estates by Niagara, where you have you rent the luxury cars and you take an estate tour, and then on the Niagara line to drive those luxury cars. Is that perhaps what their concern is with the noise and such forth?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think, and I don't want to speak for all the residents, but in speaking to my client, I think the previous tenant perhaps has caused a lot of heartache within the neighborhood, and I think they have a history of, I guess, what's transpired on the street. And I think there's a bunch of cases in Burlington and Oakville where this particular tenant has perhaps caused some issues in the neighborhood. I'm not sure if that's also tied into what you just described of what's happening in the Niagara region, but I believe it's probably to a similar extent.
Okay, thank you for that. I hope we've answered everyone else's questions. If there are no questions from the members, we can take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Flemington.
Madam Chair, having conducted my site visit and having reviewed the applicant's written submission, as well as noting the oral presentation that has been given this evening, also noting that the town's written staff report is in support of the application. I would like to note that there were some letters that were submitted in opposition to the application. There were 4 that were submitted, as well as the oral representations this evening that were expressed in opposition of the application. In comments to some of that, I think that you know, the applicant's agent has addressed that the applicant plans on using this as their primary residence. I think that a lot of those comments are you know, what the use would be as far as you know, not being in favor of, as well, noting that you know, when someone's using it as a primary residence, they should not be using it to rent out vehicles. And I'm not sure if the you know, if a resident zoning permits that type of use in that area. So I find that the variants that have been applied for, I think the applicant's agent has addressed, you know, in a positive manner, some of them being technical in nature. The driveway width one is one that is not the full width of the driveway, that it is just in the one area out front of the entry to the garage, which in my opinion, that's not going to provide a negative impact to the neighborhood. So having said that, I would like to move a motion that this application be approved as applied for, finding that it meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act. I'd like to include the following 2 conditions: that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated September 23rd, 2022, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if the building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Okay, thank you. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, all those opposed? And I have abstained. Your application has been approved. Thank you and have a good night, everyone. Aaron, you didn't have your hand up or anything, right? Shraddha? No, okay. Because my camera just keeps going back and forth, so I thought I might have missed you by mistake.
No, thank you.
Okay, application CAV 124 of 2022 at 3070 Niagawa Boulevard, deferred from August 30th of 2022. Again, this is CAV 124 of 2022 at 3070 Niagawa Boulevard. If you're interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095, and staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions. Mr. Hughes is the agent.
Maybe, can you please ask if anybody would like to move into the meeting? They're going to have to raise their hand.
Will the agent or applicant for 3070 Niagawa Boulevard, CAV 124 2022, please raise their hand? We have you listed down as Diamond Schmidt Architects and Christopher Hughes as the agent.
I've moved Mr. Hughes into the meeting.
Very well, thank you.
Sorry, I was muted there. Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris Hughes. I'm with Diamond Schmidt Architects on behalf of the town of Oakville, representing the proposed development of North Park Community Center and Library. I have a brief presentation to illustrate the context of our project. This community center and library is an extension to the existing 16-mile sports center, which is located along Niagawa, just to the north of 16 Mile Drive. The highlighted circle in red is the proposed extension of the 16 Miles Sports Center, which is also part of a larger development of the entire North Park Sports Park, which is to the north of the site. It's a very large site. If you're familiar with it, it has existing parking lots, but the many more sports fields are being developed. The community center is the issue, what's in question tonight. Next slide, please. We are seeking relief on two minor points, the building height and the setback from Niagawa. This is an overall site plan for our portion of the site, which is the community center at the bottom of the screen. A large mass in the middle, of course, is the existing 16-mile arena project. Next slide, please. And just to zoom in a little bit closer to see the impact, the current bylaw requests a maximum 6-meter setback from Niagawa, from the property line. We are seeking that to be 12.5 meters maximum. The proposed community center and library is a large facility. It's actually taller than the existing 16-mile facility, but is quite long. It's 2 stories, but given its nature, it has a lot of double height spaces. Getting the program into this area and fitting it onto the site, getting it within 6 meters of the street would have been impractical. So we have configured the building to be approximately 12.3 meters back. We seek relief to be 12.5 by the bylaw. In addition, the height is the other bylaw we're seeking relief on. The current zoning is for 11 meters. We are seeking a relief of that of just under I believe it's a couple of feet. We're at, I have to look at the town comments. It's permitted at 10.5 meters. We're approximately at 11 meters. So if we can go to the next slide. These are elevations of the project in the context of the 16-mile sports center. You can see on the bottom image, that's the sort of long elevation of 16-mile sports center. Our community center is the new building on the left end of that image with some provided. These are all 4 elevations. The one in the second from the bottom is actually the elevation along Niagara Boulevard. I've got some other drawings here, but I'm not sure they're going to be relevant. If you want to go to the next slide, we can look through the building elevations just to illustrate the overall height of the project. it is only minorly shorter than it needs to be. Getting the building up to the requested 11 meters would have been an undue hardship on the project, given the double height nature of the space. To keep this project economical, we give a maximum, or sort of, well, actually a minimum height within the gymnasium space, add the structure and a modest parapet on top, and we don't quite get to the requested height by the zoning bylaw. The jacking the entire building up about a half a meter would have added significant cost to the entire project, just in cladding alone. And I would note that given the size of the projects, a half meter over its length is extremely minor in nature. And I note also that town has submitted a supporting letter for both bylaw amendments. If we go to the 8th slide in the deck, we can skip forward to one more. There you go. And just for context, this is a rendering of the project as seen from Nayagawa Boulevard towards the south end. I'm willing to answer any questions that maybe from the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Are there any questions or items of clarifications at this time? Has anyone called in for this application, Madam Secretary?
No one at this time.
Very well. Who would like to move a motion then? Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having undertaken my site visit, having reviewed the materials, including the written staff report and the visuals prepared by the applicant, I am satisfied that the requested variances conform to the 4 tests of the Act, and I'll put forward a motion of approval. I would note that the addition of the community center is a significant contribution to the streetscape that the existing sports center isn't providing, and some of the key pieces in terms of the relationship of this building towards the street include some of the active components that are put within that main entry area at the closest point to the street edge, including the bike parking repair, a little repair station, and some of the landscape elements, including pedestrian access. It will be a significant improvement and contribution to the Nayagawa streetscape. So on this basis, I'll put forward this motion of approval, and it'll be subject to 2 conditions, those being that the development be constructed in general accordance with the final approved site plan to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning Services, and that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued.
Very well, thank you. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you, committee members. Have a good night.
Good night. Application CAV 162 of 2022 at 1196 Lynbrook Road. Again, that's CAV 162 of 2022, deferred from October the 18th of 2022 at 1196 Lynbrook Road. If anyone's interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions. I do note there are letters of support from a Mr. Navdeep Kang, Jadeep Singh, Phil and Maruk Sidwa, Joanne Oben, and Jean Rabitaye.
I've moved Ms. Yansenko.
My name is Natalia Tsenko of Crothers & Associates, and I'm here today to request 4 minor variances for this single-family home renovation at 1196 Lynbrook Road. So our proposal consists of renovating the existing unusable attic space to create a livable 3rd story. This allows for the existing 2nd floor to be renovated into a functional bedroom space for the family, while providing a multi-use area for overnight guests, sewing room, study, etc. upstairs. Our design does maintain minimal changes to the front facade of the dwelling and does keep in line with the neighboring homes. I would like to add, as you've mentioned, that we do have 3 letters of support for our application. So variance 1 seeks to permit a 2.54 left side yard setback to the addition where 4.2 is required. The proposed addition does follow the footprint of the second floor below and does not extend beyond it. So due to the proximity of the existing dwelling to the left yard setback, a variance is triggered with the proposal. However, the variance we are requesting is just matching the existing condition. Variance 2 seeks to permit 3 stories where 2 is permitted. The existing dwelling currently has an attic level that is unfinished and unlivable, and we are creating a dormer addition at the rear and renovating the existing space to create new livable space. The proposed addition impacts the dwelling very minimally, especially from the street view. Only a small portion of the roof is visible from the front of the property, and the streetscape and house massing will stay relatively similar to the existing dwelling. Variance 3 seeks to permit 67.5 square meters of floor area above the second floor, where floor area is prohibited. As noted in the staff report, the intent of regulating the floor area is to prevent a dwelling from having a mass and scale that appears larger than the dwellings in the surrounding neighborhood. But our addition faces the rear of the dwelling and will have minimal impact to the front facade. Variance 4 speaks to permit a 9.96 building height to the third story addition where 9 meters is required. This is due to the existing grading of the property, as the established grade is very low at the front of the property. So the existing building has a building height of 9.63 meters and the proposed is 9.96 meters. So we are exceeding the existing building height by 0.33 meters. This impacts the visual from the street very minimally compared to the existing dwelling. It is our opinion that the addition maintains the appropriate characteristics for the neighborhood and is consistent with the existing massing of the dwellings in the area. If you have any question at this time, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Yatsenko. Are there any questions or items of clarification at this time? Okay, I see none. Has anyone called in for this application, Madam Secretary Treasurer?
There's no one at this time.
Okay, very well. Who would like to move the motion? We'll take the matter into committee. Go ahead, Mr. Talowski. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, it's kind of refreshing to see new life being injected into an older unique home as opposed to the typical rebuild that we see time again. Madam Chair, I don't believe that there's going to be any impact from these variances. They largely reflect existing conditions. I believe that they meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act. And also note that there's letters of support from the community. So, Madam Chair, I will move that this application be approved as applied for. I would make that approval subject to the attic being built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevations dated October 19th, 2022. And that approval expires in 2 years if a building permit doesn't issue.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Klaus. Is there discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Good evening. We have minutes to confirm from November the 1st. Mr. Hardcastle, thank you. And motion to adjourn. Mr. Hardcastle, thank you. We are adjourned at 9:04.